Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Labour Party and People's Democratic Party reveal number of witnesses to testify against Tinubu's victory. President-elect Bola Tinubu returns to the country from his working visit to France. In Imo State, gunmen kill policemen at checkpoint in Ngokpala local government area. And on the foreign scene, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky meets world leaders at G7 summit in Japan. Good evening, this is News at 7 on Western Spring Television. My name is Evelyn Ohiola. The Labour Party has said it will be calling 50 witnesses to testify against the victory of the President-elect Bola Tinubu and will need 7 weeks to get this done. According to the party's counsel, Awa Kalu, who addressed the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal in Abuja today, the duration is because the forensic investigation of the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS, has yet to be carried out as directed by the court. Secondly, the council said the petitioner is awaiting some documents requested for. It was also agreed the star witnesses would need 30 minutes to demonstrate any electronic evidence. That class of witnesses will be cross-examined for 20 minutes and 5 minutes will be for re-examination, while 10 minutes will be allotted for other witnesses. For the respondents, 20 minutes was allotted for the star witnesses and 30 minutes for cross-examination. INEC said it had 5 witnesses set to testify in the Labour Party's petition and proposed 7 days to get it done. Lead counsel of the commission, Abubakar Mahmood, however, disagreed that there should be a separate time for demonstration of electronic evidence. Roland Otaro, counsel to President-elect Bola Tinubu, and the Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima proposed 9 days to call their witnesses, excluding expert witnesses. The APC aligned with the submission of Senator Tinubu and Senator Shettima's counsel, adding it would be presenting 7 witnesses for 9 days. Meanwhile, ahead of today's sitting, supporters of the Labour Party gathered outside the Court of Appeal and sang the national anthem.
Nigerian people, excellent Nigerian people, ever-conscious Nigerian people, non-giving up Nigerian youths. Today we are out again like ever. A lot of our comrades are going to be addressing.
In the meantime, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, says it will call 100 witnesses to testify at the Presidential Elections Petition Tribunal. Candidate of the PDP, Atiku Abubakar, had filed a suit challenging the election through which Bola Tinubu emerged as the president-elect. Addressing the court today, Chris Uche, counsel for Atiku Abubakar and the PDP, said all the parties met and agreed on the number of witnesses that would be presented and the duration. It said the PDP intends to call no more than 100 witnesses, adding that while 7 weeks were given to call these witnesses, only 3 weeks will be needed since the issues are getting narrower. Meanwhile, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, said it has 2 witnesses that will testify, while the counsel to the president-elect said it has 39 witnesses ready. All the parties agreed to streamline the number of witnesses as well as the duration needed for each party to call their witnesses. For the evidence in chief, they categorized them into 30 minutes for the lead witness because they will tender and identify documents. 15 minutes was proposed for each respondent for cross-examination and 5 minutes for re-examination. However, then 10 minutes was proposed for other witnesses of the petitioner and 10 minutes for cross-examination of these witnesses by the respondents. It was also proposed that 30 minutes will be given for the star witnesses of INEC, Senator Tinubu, and the All Progressives Congress, APC. Former Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Lasun Yusuf, has lamented the dearth of true governance in Nigeria. Speaking with Western Spring Television News in Osogbo, Mr. Lasun stated that it was sad that several Nigerian leaders in the corridor of power had little knowledge about making policies and decisions that would directly improve the lives of citizens. The former Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives also described as sad that many political leaders in Nigeria who desire to lead do so for pecuniary gains.
99% of people who go to government in Nigeria cannot relate government to development. I repeat, 99% of people who find themselves at the corridor of power, either at local, state, or federal level in Nigeria, don't have any business in being government. You cannot go back and interpret that to mean so many things. But I will give you examples. When I was the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, I knew right in my mind that the only thing I can do for my community to show that I understand government was to facilitate in making sure that Ojutu Bridge on the River was reconstructed. I was clear. When I got the opportunity, I put the bridge in the budget. And lo and behold, today, that bridge is complete. People are using it. But the best part of it is that when the construction of the bridge was being rounded up, the immediate past government discovered that the road was no good, and they went there and tied the road. And so today you drive to Ilobu. But whereas if I did not do that bridge, the attraction that the road was not good will not be there. Or the government will want to do the road, leave the bridge undone, and this is the bridge that on an average weekend, it will take you a minimum, at least on an average weekend of Friday and Saturday, it will take a minimum of 2 to 2.5 hours to cross a less than 20-meter bridge. That is how to relate.
Now, the President-elect Bola Tinubu has returned to the country from his working visit to France. The private jet of the two-term governor of Lagos State landed at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja at about 2:15 p.m., where he was welcomed by supporters, party members, and some governors. Amongst the delegation were Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima, Governor Abdullahi Ganduje, Senate President Ahmed Lawan, and the ruling party's anointed candidate for the post of Senate President in the 10th Assembly, Godswill Akpabio. Senator Tinubu was accompanied by his wife, Oluremi. The former Lagos governor is expected to join President Muhammadu Buhari and other dignitaries for the official opening of the Dangote refinery complex in his home state on Monday. Adopted candidate of the All Progressives Congress APC for the Speaker and Deputy Speaker of the coming 10th House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas and Benjamin Kalu, have visited the Governor-elect of Abia State, Alex Oti. The visit, which took place in Abuja, was in continuation of the candidates' nationwide consultation with stakeholders across party lines ahead of the inauguration of the 10th National Assembly on June 13th. On the entourage were leaders and members of the Joint Task 10th Assembly, coalition of members-elect of the APC and opposition parties who have adopted the ruling party's candidates. The candidates are seeking the blessing of Mr. Oti, a member of the Labour Party, and members of the opposition party from Abia State. Representative Kalu is the only returning APC member of the House from Abia, where the Labour Party swept the governorship and parliamentary seats. Now to security, gunmen have ambushed and killed some policemen at a checkpoint at Okpala Junction in the Ngo-Okpala local government area of Imo State. It was gathered that the incident, which happened today, unsettled the community as many residents fled their homes and business places. While the police spokesman in the state, Henry Okoye, confirmed that 2 policemen were killed, others said 7 cops were shot dead during the attack. The police spokesman said the gunmen were engaged in a gun duel by the vigilant policemen on duty. According to him, the gunmen abandoned one of the operational vehicles they came in, adding that the vehicle, which contained blood stains, had been recovered by the police. Mr. Okoye said the operatives of the command had taken over the area with a view to instill confidence in the minds of residents and with the plan to apprehend the suspect. In other news, the federal government says it will digitize the civil registration and vital statistics process, noting that it is targeting the registration of 12.7 million under 5 children in 2023. Director of Vital Registration Department, National Population Commission, Matthew Sunday, said with the digitization, the commission plans to register 8.08 million children in 22 priority states and 4.6 million in other states. Mr. Sunday spoke in Lagos during the opening of a 2-day workshop on the operational plans for digital birth registration. He said that digitization would increase the percentage of children with birth certificates, which is currently between 33% and 63% in urban areas and 32% in rural areas. Last week, the NPC and UNICEF announced the rollout of the digitization process in Kano, targeting the birth registration of 1 million children in Kano. No fewer than 11,350 candidates across the country sat for the May diet of the Professional Qualifying Examination organized by the Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria, TRCN. Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Education, Andrew Adejo, while monitoring the conduct of the examination in Abuja today, expressed satisfaction. Mr. Adejo, who commended the new technology introduced by the council to get the authenticity of the certificate of teachers, said the examination had witnessed some level of improvement. He said this would go a long way to weed out quackery from the system. He said the ministry was working on cleaning the teachers' database so as to have less quacks in the profession. On his part, Registrar of TRCN, Josiah Ajiboye, said the report from centers across the country indicated hit-free processes. Professor Ajiboye commended the candidates for comporting themselves before and during the exam, saying teachers are now realizing the importance of the professional qualifying examination. You're watching news at 7 on Western Spring Television. Still to come. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky meets world leaders at G7 summit in Japan. We'll bring you more on this when we return.
Aminatu, the legendary Queen of Zazao, is best known to historians as Queen Amina of Zaria, an old walled town and capital of the Hausa state of Zazao. Amina was a great warrior and the first woman to rule the ancient kingdom of Zazao. Her 34 years as queen witnessed an unprecedented expansion of Zazao by conquests. Queen Amina of Zaria belongs to the class of Amazons by the might of Harami and her strings of conquests. She opened Zaria to trans-border trade and was said to have initiated kola nut cultivation in the ancient kingdom. The Hausa Muslim figure was born in 1533 and died in 1610 at the age of 77 years. Folklores remember Aminatu, the Queen of Zazao, as a brave, smart and and talented leader, whose giant statue now adorns the National Arts Theatre in Lagos, Nigeria, while many educational institutions bear her name. Western Spring Television identifies Queen Amina as a watershed character in history. The Korean War of 1950 to 1953 pitched North and South Korea against each other in response to intrigues by nations beyond their border with different interests from those canvassed by the two brother nations. The Korean War had all the nuances of an external conflict induced by powers that were interested in subjugating North and South Korea. Japan had leveraged on its military power to annex Korea in 1900 and imposed a military union that did not sit well with the citizens. Japan not only lost its war of conquest against Korea, all its powers were obliterated by the effect of the World War II. The end of World War II got Korea divided into two nations along 38 parallel lines by the instrumentality of the United States of America and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. The Korean War lapsed into a Cold War when it stopped the prying eyes of external forces into the internal affairs of a nation now divided along its north and southern territories. Western Spring Television identifies the Korean War as a major event in history. James Ajibola Ige was a lawyer who obtained his first degree in classics from Nigeria's premier University of Ibadan. Born September 13, 1930, the orator and the polyglot spoke impeccable English, French, Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba languages. His fine diction placed him among classical orators and public speakers like Cicero, the Roman orator. This attribute earned him the prefix Cicero of Esauke. He authored Kaduna Boy, an autobiography, Detainee's Diary, Constitution, and the People, among 6 other books. Bola Ige was a colorful politician, elected governor of Oyo State in 1979 and appointed a federal minister in 1999. He was a pioneer founder of Afenifere, the Yoruba social, cultural, and political group. He invested his political sagacity to propel the group to the height of political leadership and decision-making in the southwest of Nigeria. Bola Ige was assassinated on the 23rd December 2001. His murderers are yet to be apprehended till today. Western Spring Television identifies Bola Ige as a watershed character in history. Born 16th September 1923, named Harry Lee Kwan and known as Lee Kuan Yew, he was often addressed by his initials of LKY. Lee Kuan Yew was a barrister and the first Prime Minister of Singapore between 1959 and 1990. Educated at Raffles Institution from 1936 to 1940 and the Fitzwilliam House between 1947 and 1949, Lee Kuan Yew established a highly effective and anti-corrupt governance system that midwives the transformation of Singapore into a high net worth income economy within a generation. He never hid his exception to Western mode democratic ideal, which he believed had not assisted developing nations to attain good government. Before his death on 23rd March 2015, the People's Action Party, which he founded, had used its political influence to establish the United World College of Southeast Asia to expand his economic ideas among countries that constitute the Asian Tiger. Western Spring Television identifies Lee Kuan Yew as a major character in history.
Welcome back. This is still news at 7 on Western Spring Television. A reminder of our headlines. Labour Party and People's Democratic Party reveal number of witnesses to testify against Tinubu's victory. President-elect Bola Tinubu returns to the country from his working visit to France. In Imo State, gunmen killed policemen at checkpoint in Ungo-Pala local government area. And on the foreign scene, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky meets world leaders at G7 summit in Japan. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has asked Governor of Zamfara Bello Matawalle to provide evidence that chairperson of the agency, Abdulrasheed Bawa, demanded $2 million from him. Governor Matawalle had made the allegation in an interview granted to the BBC Hausa. In a statement, EFCC spokesperson Wilson Wujare said Governor Matawalle should go beyond the allegation by providing concrete evidence as proof. The anti-graft agency had earlier disclosed that it was probing the governor for allegedly diverting 70 billion naira meant for contracts in the state. In Osun State, chairman of the People's Democratic Party (PDP), Sunday BC, has assured that citizens of Osun State will enjoy the dividends of democracy during the Ademola Adeleke-led administration. Speaking with Western Spring Television in Osogbo, Mr. BC stated that the PDP has a track record to show it is capable of moving Osun State forward. The PDP chairman stated that the party understands the needs of the people, citing as a case study the Imola Free Eye Medical Service across the 30 local government areas of the state to mark the 100 days in office of Governor Adeleke. He said the PDP is not deterred or scared to play politicking with the opposition All Progressives Congress (APC). Speaking on the crisis within the PDP in Osun, Mr. BC stated that all hands are on deck to move the party forward and support the governor.
So this time around, since it's a familiar terrain, we are going to do wonders in Osun State. Since assumption of office of our governor, we have been doing so many things. The 30 months arrears or the civil servants, we have started paying it, at least one after the other. The pensioners, we have been trying for them, and even the contributory pensioners that were abandoned by these people, we have started with them. Mind you, University of Elisha has been properly instituted. You understand, with principal officers, and they have started, at the campus. Very soon, the admission, will roll in, and the people, students will be admitted into the university. So we are touching all, facets of our human endeavors. So people should expect much from us in Osun State this time around. We are going to do our best. We are going to leave a legacy. When we started this Imola Free Medical Surgery, we realized that actually people are suffering at home. People do not have money, to treat themselves and something else like that. This is why the idea of this free medical surgery came in, and it's working and working very well to the extent that people from other states are even coming to Osun to enjoy, the program. So I am telling you that by the grace of God, the next 4 years and another 4 years is guaranteed for PDP. Everybody has his own role to play. APC as opposition, yes, we welcome them. You understand? But we are not going to relent in our effort. So they wouldn't have anything to say. APC is reputed, they are noted for telling lies. That is what they are noted for. You understand? But we are capable of matching them this time around. We won't allow them to mislead the good people of Osun.
Now moving on, President-elect Bola Tinubu says the death of Shibomi Balogun, founder of First City Monument Bank, FCMB, would create a vacuum that would be difficult to fill in the banking industry. Mr. Balogun passed away yesterday morning in London after an illness at 89 years old. The president-elect, in a statement today, described the FCMB founder as a giant amongst men for his trailblazing and pioneering role in investment banking in Nigeria. Senator Tinubu said the founder lived a life full of many accomplishments and achieved what many considered impossible when he pioneered investment banking in Nigeria. He added that Mr. Balogun changed the course of history and lived a life on his own terms as a reputable investment banker. On the foreign scene, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Japan for the G7 summit, where he has been meeting world leaders. He was greeted with an embrace by British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who welcomed him to Hiroshima. Shortly after his plane landed, Mr. Zelensky tweeted that peace will be closer as a result of meetings at the summit of rich allied nations. G7 leaders have released the summit's final communique, which touches on how the group wants to support Ukraine against the Russian invasion. The G7 comprises the US, UK, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan, but 8 other nations have been invited this year. In the meantime, the United States says it will allow its Western allies to supply Ukraine with advanced fighter jets, including American-made F-16s, in a major boost for Kyiv. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said President Joe Biden informed his G7 counterparts of the decision at the bloc summit in Japan. Mr. Sullivan said U.S. troops will also train Kyiv's pilots to use the jets. In a reaction, Russia said countries would run enormous risks if they supplied F-16s to Ukraine. Ukraine has long sought advanced jets, and President Volodymyr Zelensky hailed the move as a historic decision.
On Ukraine, we have now announced some 300 sanctions against individuals, entities, vessels, and aircraft. We've reached a moment where it is time to look down the road and to say, what is Ukraine going to need as part of a future force to be able to deter and defend against Russian aggression as we go forward? F-16's fourth-generation fighter aircraft are part of that mix. As the training unfolds in the coming months, we will work with our allies to determine when planes will be delivered, who will be delivering them, and how many.
Meanwhile, head of the Russian Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has claimed his forces have taken full control of Bakhmut in the east. He noted that the city had been completely taken from house to house after months of intense fighting. However, Ukraine has denied this, but admitted the situation in the city was critical, maintaining it has some ground control there. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Gana Malia, in a post on Telegram, reveals that Ukrainian troops were holding the defense in the city's airplane area. Elsewhere, a tourist plane crashed in a mountainous area of western Switzerland today, reportedly leaving several people dead. Regional police confirmed that a plane had crashed near Port de Martel in the Swiss canton of Neuchâtel, but did not immediately provide more details. According to media reports, several people died in the crash, which is said to have happened in a steep and forested area in the Neuchâtel Mountains. Police said they would hold off on providing information on the plane that crashed, how many people who had been on board, and how many who may have perished or been injured until their families had been informed of the incident. Rescue services and police are at the scene of the wreckage, and authorities have opened an investigation into the circumstances surrounding the crash. Turkish citizens based abroad began voting today in Turkey's presidential runoff election between the incumbent Tayyip Erdogan and his challenger Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, who aims to bring an end to the president's two-decade rule. The runoff election will be held in Turkey on May 28th after Mr. Erdogan fell just short of the 50% threshold needed to win the presidential vote outright last Sunday in what had been expected to be his greatest ever political challenge. Some 3.4 million Turks are eligible to vote abroad out of a total electorate of more than 64 million and will cast their ballots from May 20th to 24th. State-owned Anadolu News Agency said voting had started in countries across Asia and Europe. Germany is home to the world's largest Turkish diaspora, where there are some 1.5 Turkish citizens eligible to vote. Still ahead, G7 leaders say the world must urgently assess the impact of generative artificial intelligence. We have more on this and other business stories after this break. Please stay with us.
Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet for human activists against segregation by the minority white suprematists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Western Spring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history. Named Mao Zedong at birth, but globally known as Mao Zedong, he was a Chinese revolutionary and founder, People's Republic of China, which he led as chairman of the Chinese Communist Party from 1949 until his death in 1976. He was a communist who believed in the attainment of power by the instrumentality of gun. His wise saying, "Political power grows out of the barrel of gun," formed the major plank of his revolutionary struggle for the control of China. In the long span of his leadership and political power, Mao Zedong relentlessly entrenched the communist philosophy in China, which emphasized the revolutionary struggle of the vast majority of people against the exploiting class and their state structures. The communist leaders defined the class struggle as people's war. Mao Zedong was a story of grass to grace, having risen from peasantry to preeminent status as China's most respected leader. Western Spring Television identifies Mao Zedong as a major character in history. The British Empire was the largest and the most powerful in the world. At its zenith, the empire embraced a quarter of the Earth's land surface and imposed her imperial majesty's rule on more than 458 million peoples across nations and continents. The empire took off with overseas possessions and trading posts established by England, spread over 3 million kilometers between 16th and early 18th century. Like previous empires, the British Empire began to crumble on its weight of overstretched territories and growing unrest in our various colonies. Today, the British Empire no longer exists. What is in place is the Commonwealth of Nations, a loose association of sovereign states which recognize the King of England as the titular head. Western Spring Television identifies the British Empire as a watershed empire in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker, and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. first television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 Naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
Welcome back. Now let's get to business. Ogun State Governor Dapo Abiodun has hailed President Muhammad Buhari on the appointment of first female Accountant General of the Federation, Dr. Toyin Madey. Governor Abiodun, in a statement in Abeokuta by his Chief Press Secretary, Kunle Shomori, expressed delight that Dr. Madey, the first female to occupy the exalted position in the country, is from Ogun. The governor stated that she had recorded another first for the state, reputed for many firsts in the country. According to the governor, the newly appointed Accountant General's track records and astuteness in the accounting profession served as a launch pad into the #1 public accounting officer in the country. Governor Abiodun lauded the president for approving the appointment, saying such feat by the state-born public administrator would serve as an encouragement for the women folk in the country. He, however, urged the Iperu Remo-born public servant to uphold the ethics of the accounting profession and give good account of herself as a true-born Ogun indigene. Tuta absoluta, also known as tomato Ebola, is ravaging tomato farms in parts of Nigeria, costing as much as 1.3 billion naira in economic dimensions, with scarcity looming. Olayinka Ale visited the Alekuwodo market in Osogbo, the Osun State capital, to ascertain the scarcity and price of the produce.
Nigerians are faced with the fresh or cheapest tomato scarcity hits markets across the country again, though the development was envisaged a few weeks back due to the resurgence of the deadly tomato disease, Tuta absoluta, also known as tomato Ebola in Kano State. But nobody, not even the farmers, hardly anticipated the extent of devastation on farms, as the supply gap across the country has widened tremendously. Unfortunately, the situation may get worse in the next few weeks, as there seems to be no solution in sight, based on reports that the disease might spread to other states. Currently, based on a market survey in Osogbo, the Osun State capital, the price of the produce has increased with about 100% at the popular Alekuwodo market. A basket, which sells around 15,000 naira to 20,000 naira earlier in the year, has increased between 55,000 naira and 60,000 naira in the last 2 weeks. A paint plastic size sold for about 500 naira and 800 naira now sells between 3,000 naira and 3,200 naira. The volume usually sold for 200 naira has increased to 500 naira, while the least sold in the cone-shaped models sold between 50 naira and 100 naira has been pegged at 200 naira. As a result, the pain of consumers and farmers who are still grappling with the negative impact of the naira redesign policy has deepened. Many households are currently spending extra cost to buy the produce, while those who could not afford are devising alternatives. The crop season, which was first reported in Kano State, had the early period of dry season, crippling hectares of cultivated farms, has spread to 4 other states: Kaduna, Katsina, Jigawa, and Gombe, leaving growers in irreparable losses, running into billions of naira. Orelu Afawole and Abiola Ogunsoya, tomato sellers at the Alekuwodo market to Osogbo, both stated that the Hausa supplier hinted them that the Tuta absoluta is a major cause of the crisis, which they hope solution would be profounded.
Because of pests, the pests in the farm, because of diseases, pest and diseases, and the fertilizer they are using is so expensive. So many stuff like that, and people are really complaining. Most people are not even using tomato anymore; they are using tomato paste.
That farmer tell us that Ebola tomato make tomato cost now. I'm not know the reason, but he say Ebola tomato. The people complain because it's too expensive. Past the one I bought sell before. Basket now is 60,000. The one I sell 100 naira is 2,000 naira. 200 now. The one I sell 1,000 is 2,005.
The rising price of tomatoes has been alarming as buyers lament about the cost of buying. Sellers are complaining about the low patronage. Farmers have, however, been admonished to find a lasting solution to the problem. Olayinka Ali, Western Spring Television News.
Country Director of the World Bank, Shubham Chaudhary, has asked Nigeria's federal and state governments to consider the financial implications that a continuous fuel subsidy regime could have on their revenues as the government contemplates the removal of fuel subsidy. Mr. Chaudhary gave the warning at the induction program for newly elected and re-elected governors at the banquet hall of the presidential villa in Abuja. The World Bank official warned that the situation could get worse if the right decisions about fuel subsidy regime are not taken. He expressed concern over the rise in debt profile of some states, warning that the situation could get worse, depending on the decision of the government on the fuel subsidy regime. The induction program was aimed at intimating the governors-elect to the opportunities that exist with development partners, including grants, partnerships, and project sponsorships. In the meantime, G7 leaders today said the world must urgently assess the impact of generative artificial intelligence, announcing they will launch discussions this year on responsible use of the technology. In a communique released during a summit in Hiroshima, Japan, the 7 leading economies said a working group will be set to tackle issues from copyright to disinformation. Text generation tools such as ChatGPT, image creators, and music composed using AI have sparked delight, alarm, and legal battles as creators accuse them of scrapping material without permission. Governments worldwide are under pressure to move quickly to mitigate their risks, with the chief executive of ChatGPT's OpenAI telling U.S. lawmakers this week that regulating AI was essential. In sports, Frank Oyeka put up a fine performance as Brentford claimed a stunning 3-1 away victory against Tottenham Hotspur today. Oyeka started the game and was replaced after the break by Denmark midfielder Mikael Damsgaard. The 25-year-old has made 20 league appearances for the Bees this season. The win boosted Brentford's chances of securing European football next season.
These players keep, I don't like to say surprise me because they don't surprise me, but impress me massively with their willpower and determination, which is a key foundation if you want to create something fantastic. I think first half we hang in there. I'm disappointed with the performance in first half, but good recovery runs, blocks, a good keeper. You need to have that because you very rarely play 90 perfect minutes. But the second half performance, maybe one of the best performances away. Second half performance, probably the best away half, whatever, in the season, where we were very good on the ball, very aggressive in high pressure, scored 3 very nice goals, and in the last 10 minutes had to, of course, defend well.
Now, in the meantime, Everton's fight to avoid the drop into the Championship will go down to the final day of the season, despite Yeremina snatching a dramatic equaliser deep into stoppage time at Wolves. The Toffees looked on course for a damaging defeat until Mina pounced in a goal-mouth scramble in the final seconds of 9 minutes of additional time to give Sean Dyche's side what might prove to be a priceless point. Everton must now anxiously await how other results pans out to discover the full extent of their task when they face Bournemouth at Goodison Park. Everton will attempt to avoid their first relegation from the top tier since 1951.
Just the only thing I can say is the 9 minutes. We never saw that during the season, and I really asked the ref why. He told me the refs have been told to give the exactly time on the last 2 games. don't know why they not do it during all the season and only on the last 2 games. Maybe to be more competitive, maybe to put a bit more adrenaline on Premier League, but that doesn't make any sense for me, because if you want to do it on the last 2 games, you need to do it during all the season and not only the last 2 games. That's it.
Obviously, that's a source of complaint amongst your players and the manager as well, that there was that change, if that's the case.
Well, we always we had some games in here that the away team lost so many times, and the 4 and 5 minutes were given. We asked why. They told us every single time. They told us the Premier League were not the World Cup. So for the last 2 games, they decided to be the World Cup.
Meanwhile, Roberto Firmino scored an 89th minute equaliser to salvage a draw against Aston Villa and keep alive Liverpool's faint hopes of a top 4 Premier League finish. Jurgen Klopp's side are 3 points behind Newcastle United and Manchester United with 1 game remaining, meaning their 2 rivals need just 1 point from their final 2 games to secure Champions League qualification for next season. The fact that it remains mathematically possible, if perhaps unlikely, is down to the departing Firmino sneaking in at the near post to convert Mohamed Salah's low cross. The visitors will be disappointed not to have claimed all 3 points after an impressive display. In Spain, Real Madrid manager Carlo Ancelotti says the club have told him he will be staying in his role. The Italian, who has been linked with taking over as Brazil's manager, also said he wanted to see out his current deal with the Spanish club. Ancelotti managed the Bernabeu club for 2 years between 2013 and 2015, with his departure coming a year after he had won the Champions League, and in return for a second stint in charge after leaving Everton in June 2021. It led Real to a 14th European Cup and the Spanish League title last season, but they have failed to reach those heights in the current campaign. Real were convincingly beaten by Manchester City in the Champions League semi-finals, and they are 14 points behind Barcelona, who have been crowned La Liga champions with 4 games to go. Ancelotti has won the UEFA Super Cup, FIFA Club World Cup, and Copa del Rey with Real during the present campaign. And that's all we have for you at this hour. But before we go, here is a recap of our major stories. The Labour Party has said it will be calling 50 witnesses, while the People's Democratic Party, PDP, will call 100 witnesses to testify against the victory of the President-elect Bola Tinubu. The President-elect Bola Tinubu has returned to the country from his working visit to France. Gunmen have ambushed and killed some policemen at a checkpoint at Okpala Junction in the Ngo-Okpala local government area of Imo State. And on the foreign scene, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Japan for the G7 summit, where he has been meeting world leaders. Please do follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. I am Evelyn Ohiola. Do have for yourself a nice night.